Hello, Harsh.
Hello.
All right, we'll give a couple of minutes for people to join in and then start.
Sure.
How's the weather down in sunny Florida?
Apparently, it's not sunny today.
Same here in Jersey, but we'll wait a few minutes and the sun may come out.
It's always the same though. Higher 80s with a chance of shower.
There you go. Perfect. So, look, we have a very exciting topic here today to discuss agentic implementations, our own agent that we've built that we're going to walk you through and show everyone how we do what we do. Just on a logistical note, please ask all your questions in chat on LinkedIn. I think that you're watching this. We'll answer any questions that we get there. Just for everyone's benefit, my name is Ahmed Zaidi. I'm the CEO, and I like to use the title Chief Automation Officer here at Accelerate. We are a automation and AI service provider focused very specifically on AI, agentic automation, implementation of agents, implementation of automation, implementation of RPA, a lot of cool stuff. I have with me my good friend Harsh, who is the CEO of the company. Harsh, say hello to everyone. Tell us about what you do here at Accelerate.
Yeah, hello everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I've been with Accelirate for more than 8 years. My day job is evangelizing AI automation with our customers, managing customer success. One of the things I've taken up recently is also recruitment, and that's where our use case from today comes in. So very happy to be here and sharing
That's very
our
cool.
Agentic.
All right. So I think before we get into the actual demo, I really like to show, just like to talk about what agentic automation is, what agents are. I think it's important to just at least level set on what we're talking about. So I'm going to share my screen here and show a presentation that I've been working on, and we talked to a lot of folks about what are agents. In fact, if you're interested, we'll send you the presentation as well. I actually usually start talking from this point of the glossary. There's a lot of different terms that people use: RAG, vector databases, LLMs. But I think it's important to understand, and I'm going to use these words. If you don't understand any of that stuff, feel free to put it in chat and we'll try to get into it. But I think the essentials of an agent are really more around the three things that are on the left with it, which I think are the sort of the essentials of agents, which is AI-based decisioning, which is really done through a model that is designed to reason and figure out, a large language model that is designed to reason and figure out how to execute a process, how to what the next steps on the process should be. And in order to do that, it uses a couple of very important things that makes an agent an agent: context data. This could be static data. This could be policies, standard operating procedures, rule, process context. And I call it static because it's this is the stuff that you give as context to the LLM to say, this is what you do, these are the rules that you need to follow, these are the documents that you have in order to execute whatever you need to execute. Very similar to all the reference material that you'd give a person to refer to when they're making decisions. And then the other very, very important thing I think that's missing when people talk about agents, as opposed to a ChatGPT or a Gemini that you might just be using, are the tools. These tools are tools for the agent to use to access systems. It could be an accounting system, it could be an EHR, it could be any one of the n number of systems that you use within the organization, external or internal data sources. These could be APIs, these could be RPA robots, integrations to various system of records. I think with these three things, an agent can execute a process that you have defined. However, I think the things on the right are really important also, especially in the enterprise, especially when you are using agents for things that that require governance, that require review, that require audit, compliance, all sorts of things that are sort of a necessary and a given in an organization. Human review, escalating decisions to humans for review and decisioning, that's important. Memory, I think by default, a lot of the LLMs are not. They keep some context of the conversation, but generally speaking, not outside of that context. So memory is important. What did I do last time? Remembering that and applying that to the discussion, to the decisions that it makes afterwards. And I think a very, very important part is the orchestration part, being able to monitor, orchestrate the various agents you might have in your organization, log what decisions were made, how were they made, what were the inputs, what were the outputs. I think that's very, very, very important. Harsh, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no. So this is actually covers all aspects. The key takeaway here is we've seen generative AI for more than 2 years as a consumer technology, and this slide really explains how to take a consumer technology and use it in the enterprise with the right guardrails.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think most people have seen LLMs in the context of assistants, right? We all look at ChatGPT and think that's an agent, right? But I think it's important to understand that there are two types of agents, at least when we talk to customers. One are assistants, an assistant that interacts with the user and looks at, and is accessed through a chat interface. However, there are also a whole different class of agents called automation agents, which run in the background. They listen to events, they can monitor changes, they can be triggered by various things that happen either in the system of record, through an API, all sorts of stuff, and they then act upon whatever that trigger is and execute something specifically which needs to be executed.
And I'm smiling because a lot of our audience comes from the old RPA world. We had the same attended versus unattended automations, and this is so much similar in terms of pattern.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to stop sharing this here. Let's get into Harsh. What is the use case?
Yeah. So we've been working with UiPath closely ever since they launched the Agent Builder last year, and we obviously started working with some of our closest customers. But at the same time, we said, what is it that we could do internally to use this technology and demonstrate that this technology really works? And one of the problems that came across was really interesting in the sense that we do a lot of hiring, especially when it comes to India, Colombia. We get tons of resumes. We go through tons of interviews, and we started to look at the role of the recruiter and see how can Agentic really help in optimizing that role. One of the most common patterns that we have is people just sending us their resumes. Some resumes are relevant, and some resumes are not so relevant. However, the volume of these emails is so much that I'm always afraid that we're probably losing a potential candidate in the kind of like the needle in the haystack situation. So we began just a month ago. We started to use the Agent Builder and the Maestro to automate a few of our recruiters' tasks as well as expertise, if you will. And this demo will show you a slice of that.
Okay, let me start the demo here real quick. So we're going to walk through some of this stuff as it's playing. So here you go. Hopefully you can see my screen. Harsh, talk through what this.
Yeah, so I'll first define the business problem. The business problem, as it stands today, is we have tons of incoming resumes from job applicants. They usually send an email, which acts as a cover letter. Usually, they will say which job they're applying for, but the main ingredient is the resume, which is an attachment to that email. We have recruiters monitoring that mailbox all the time. They go through it, they try to match the incoming applicant to a job description or a position. And if the position is relevant, if the resume is good, then they take some next steps from. So we took that pattern and said, how would this work in a more agentic world? So if you remember, Emmett spoke about two types of agents. The first was the assistant. So if you see on the right, there is a recruiter who has a autopilot for everyone assistant that the recruiter uses to interact with the agents in the background. And then on the left side, within UiPath Maestro, you have 3 agents that do different tasks. So essentially, what happens, the candidate's resume comes in, it gets processed, and it goes through various context grounding steps and evaluation steps. And at the end, there is a evaluator agent that makes a decision on what to do with that particular candidate. Should we send it to the recruiter, or should we reject it, or should we keep it because there's no relevant position that the candidate has applied for? And that's really where the notification process comes in.
That's awesome. I think, Harsh, it's interesting that you have agents inside this agent: email analysis agent, resume extraction agent, candidate evaluator agent. Want to talk through some of the thought process around that?
Right. So just like any object-oriented design, we want to modularize these agents so that they're easier to test, maintain, and scale. The key concept with any agent is what I call as the NBA, the next best action. And if we can build agents that are focused on one action and one decision, then it's really easy to like daisy chain them. And tomorrow you could reuse them. You could, if there is a new version of the LLM and these agents misbehave, you can quickly make changes to them. So from that standpoint, modularization and some application of some design principles is very important.
Perfect. So let's see the agent in action here. So this is a recruiter interacting with our agent. They've asked for the open positions and the candidates that have applied for a particular position. Now they're saying, okay, show me the interview status if they've been scheduled by a particular candidate. So this is sort of your chat interface. Instead of going into various systems, going back and forth, it makes it much easier for them to go through this. Now, what you'll see here is the Maestro, where
so here we're just sending a dummy application to the mailbox.
Yep.
And now, as soon as the email comes in, it triggers a flow with various agents lined up. So the first step usually is to read the email, analyze the email, get the context of various job descriptions, match the resume to those job descriptions, and then once it is matched to a certain job description, evaluate the resume and give out a score, and based on the score, then determine the next best action.
So this is really interesting. I think to be able to see how a process gets executed, monitor it, and actually be able to see what's happening with it, that's very interesting. And by the way, so what has happened now is instead of the recruiter having to go through the profile, go through the job description, go through the required requirements, for the lack of a better word, of the job, the must-haves and the nice-to-haves, the the agent has already done much of that hard work, and the agent says it believes the next good action is to go and schedule an interview with this particular candidate.
Yep.
Now, with all of that data, your recruiter is now able to chat with this agent and get all the information that has happened. In the manual world, a recruiter would have been going through, for every position I think we fill, we probably interview anywhere from 10 to 15 people. To interview 10 to 15 people, we probably go through about 30 to 50 resumes of people. And it's a very time-consuming job to go and actually have a record of why a resume was not looked at. And it just becomes a very tedious task. So being able to do all of that through an agent becomes it gives us a lot of time back to the recruiter. In fact, let's play with this agent in real time.
Yeah, just one thing that I'd like to add here, Ahmed, is it is more natural to ask a question than to go through a grid of resumes, right? So we do have our own HRIS. We have an applicant tracking system that we use behind the scenes, but it is just more natural to ask the assistant, hey, what happened to this candidate? And did the interview happen? If it happened, what were the results from the interview? Rather than go open up, log into the applicant tracking system, search for the candidate, go step by step. We did count it was like 10 to 12 clicks to just get to that answer, and now a few keystrokes will get you the same answer quickly.
Now let's play with this real live. Let's see, I'm going to have some prompts that I've written down in a document that I'm copying and pasting. So let's get all the open jobs and show me the list as a table. So here's all the open jobs. I want to know a little bit more about what's going on with the automation engineer position. So I want to get all the applicants for the automation engineer position. So now it's actually running a tool that is getting all the applications for a particular job and all the applications for a particular position. It's getting all the information about the candidate and the evaluation results and so on and so forth that we've already stored in the database. So that's what this tool is doing, and that tool takes as an input the automation engineer position. It knows that that all this information is in a database that it needs to retrieve it from.
Yep.
So it gave me a brief overview of each candidate. I look at Sarah, I'm like, okay, cool, 12 years of experience. Let me ask it an interesting question, because it has all the information about Sarah. I'm going to ask him what type of a role she's better suited for. So it's now thinking through. Now, interestingly, we have given this agent some memory. It has in-context memory that it actually, when it got all the applications, all the applicants for a particular candidate, it has all of that stuff in its memory. And by looking at that, it didn't have to go out to use the tool again. It actually looked at it, gave me a background on Sarah's professional background, technical skills, career progression, so on and so forth. And it makes a determination that seems like she's better for a UiPath role because she has UiPath certifications, direct experience. Also, it's very interesting that she probably could do Blue Prism as well, but she is more suited for a role with UI that requires UiPath experience. I love it. I just want to tell my manager that it's done. Let me have my agent draft an email. Now, look, I think what's interesting here is somebody might say, hey, look, I could go to my ATIS and do all of this stuff, or my HRIS and do all of this stuff. In here, I'm actually able to provide specific instructions, write an email, all of that good stuff, and just have this be written out quickly to my Outlook right off the bat.
Okay.
So I'm just going to do this.
I think you can also select the whole. There's a copy.
Yeah.
You can copy paste it right from there, and then.
So once I copy paste this, I can go into my Outlook and just draft that email. Let me show you the email that it got drafted. There you go.
So while you're doing that, Ahmed, it's so much interesting that in the past 8 years we've been focusing on automating work, while the paradigm here is automation of expertise.
Yep.
The assistant is almost acting like a recruiter, and saying, for example, that Sarah would be, while she does have UiPath experience, if you're looking for Blue Prism, she would be able to adapt. And,
Absolutely. It was really interesting.
That's really interesting.
So that was interesting, right, Harsh? Just to look at how we can actually interact with this agent. What's really interesting to me, as I've been looking at and talking to the developers who developed this, to look at the way they developed the tools, the way they developed the modularity, the way they looked at logic was actually interestingly a little different than the traditional programming.
It is the deterministic. So we have all been used to deterministic way of programming, right? If we write good code, we get good results. If we write bad code, we get bad results. With
absolutely, it was a very, you will get this input, you'll have to produce this output, and then out of that output, you take this input and apply this rule to it. But it's interesting. So, Harsh, COO, recruitment, all of that stuff, you're responsible for delivery. We're now delivering these agents in the real world. How do you have to change, the sort of skill set? How do you determine what skill sets? Number one, what skill sets you needed. Number two, who did you pick? How did you? What's your thought process around training people on how to do this? What's the base ingredient that goes into these skill sets? Talk a little bit more about that.
It's a lot of different layers to that answer. So after delivering a few of these projects, we looked at the patterns and we said, what is it that really works, and what is it that is different from the way we have been doing automation for the past 8 years? So it's yes, there is addition of a couple of new roles, but more importantly, the existing roles need to refocus more on finding those subjective opportunities and then building solutions to address those subjective opportunities. So for example, let's just start with the analyst. So the analyst now, instead of saying that this is too subjective, the rules are very abstract, I'm not going to touch this, the analyst now needs to embrace that and say, yes, this is perfect, because now I can put this into an agent, and stuff that I needed human in the loop for, or stuff that were business exceptions in the past, are now actually going to get automated. And as a result, my straight-through processing rate is going to increase tremendously. So it's the change in the mindset of the analyst. The next is the architect. So now the architect has to incorporate this module within the end-to-end solution that deals with abstract subjective decision making, and how to build guardrails around it so that that box has a clear terms of engagement, right? Clear API definition. This goes in, this goes out, but internally, all the non-deterministic stuff is kind of encapsulated, so the rest of the system doesn't break down if the LLM goes haywire.
Makes sense.
In terms of new roles, I mean, obviously, prompt engineering is a new skill, and it can be learned fairly quickly. So we retrained some of our automation developers to use prompt engineering as a mechanism to make their code smarter, or their applications or their solutions smarter. I don't see it any different than teaching a JavaScript developer, here, use SQL, and now you can directly query these tables and extract information. So now the same developer, you're saying, well, use prompt engineering and an LLM to make some of your decisions.
Makes sense.
And then finally, Ahmed, your favorite topic, QA. So how does QA change? And maybe you can add a few thoughts on that yourself.
Yeah. Look, I think the interesting thing here is we've been looking at models, testing models. We've been looking at the interesting thing we've always had. Look, you had very deterministic inputs, outputs. You could actually just do string matching and figure out whether the response or the result was exactly what you needed. So if you had a structured email or a structured input to a database that needed to go, you could very easily say, this is what it is. So example, for candidate evaluation, if there was an expected evaluation, you could just say, hey, listen, this should be the score, and this should be the text in the evaluation score on why it was evaluated that way. Now that text may change. It may mean the same thing, but that text may change. So you actually need to semantically look at these responses and be able to test and make sure whether this response is semantically identical, or how identical is it to my perfect expected prompt or expected output, which is interesting. So we're doing some very interesting stuff on the QA for this, because you end up needing a lot of agentic capabilities just to test the output of these agents. So that's very interesting. It was a big no. Don't use the software to test the software, but it kind of have to draw a little bit of a some parallels to self-testing, because now you can actually take the same LLM that's producing the output, or a different LLM that is better at reasoning, or that may be better at semantic understanding of certain things, and actually then match them up together. The other interesting thing also on the tools was, you used to very strict API contracts that said you give X, you get Y, so on and so forth. One of the interesting things that we saw in some of the tools as we're developing is providing not just what was asked for, but maybe a little bit more information. So for example, when you look for open positions, we actually send back a list of all positions for that particular role. Because I said, get me all open positions for Accelirate, for an automation engineer. It looked through and actually said, okay, well, all these things are close to automation engineer. Let me send back everything, including ones that may be in draft or closed. And then the LLM decided, oh, look, I got all this information back. Let me show the open ones. And by the way, when I do this for, hey, show me all open positions for this particular role, it showed me when there were open positions. By using that paradigm, in fact, what ended up happening was I asked for an open position that did not exist. It says, well, I don't have any open positions for this particular role. By the way, there are 4 in draft state that are close to that role. You may want to take a look at these. So it was interesting to see how
almost human-like. It's almost human.
Absolutely. But interestingly, that was sort of the interesting part, was that the tools actually enabled that, which was very interesting. I think we want to take a little bit of time to answer some of the questions. So we're going to look for some questions on our chat sessions. Let me switch to those windows, and we'll take a pause to actually look for those questions.